Okay, well, we're going to try this once again. Well, one of the things that I'm always sad about is the conclusion of a story. Well, it's nice to know the end of the story. I might have a surprise for you next week. In the meantime, we're at chapter 10, the very end of the story you've been listening to, the R.G. LeTourneau Stories of Great Christians, and I don't want to disappoint anyone, so here's the final chapter.
Stories of Great Christians. From the Department of Broadcasting of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago, we bring you Chapter 10 of Mover of Men and Mountains, the story of Robert Gilmore LeTourneau. I was 65 years old in 1953. Most everybody expected me to retire. This was the time in our American history of business that companies, big companies, began looking for ways to diversify as well as to expand. Our company seemed to be attractive to a number of firms. The best offer came from Westinghouse Air Brake Company, and when we finally signed the papers, I kept two plants. One's in Vicksburg, Mississippi, and Longview, Texas. And the new company of Westinghouse LeTourneau took over the plants in Peoria, Illinois, Toccoa, Georgia, and Australia. Part of the agreement was that I would not build any earth-moving equipment for a period of 5 years. I guess they thought that that was a safe limitation. For all of this, we were paid the sum of $31 million. Please keep in mind that 90% of the stock was owned by the foundation. So whatever would happen, the Lord's work would progress and prosper. I'll be telling you a bit later how I spent those first 5 years of retirement, plus a few more after that. But let me fill in a few of the gaps. Our company had a large commitment and involvement in World War II. We manufactured 155 millimeter shells, but mostly we manufactured what we normally made, earth-moving equipment. I make no apology. I've already said that I'm not a pacifist. I know many fine Christians who are, but I happen to believe that even Christians are expected to protect their loved ones when they're under attack. But, be that as it may, during World War II, we had our hands full. You know what was usually the first piece of equipment to come off the landing craft, whether in the Pacific or Anzio or Normandy? A bulldozer. And more likely than not, a LeTourneau bulldozer. Beaches had to be smooth for easier and safer landings. Simple roads and exits had to be made quickly.
It was an engineer's war.
That was said by none other than General Douglas MacArthur. Reflect with me for a moment. Not only was earth-moving equipment vital on the landing beaches, it was essential in clearing debris and building and rebuilding runways for aircraft, as well as for building more conventional bridges and roads and storage sites. Up until World War II, our Corps of Engineers, for the most part, used tools and techniques that have been used since the days of the Civil War. Really. After all, our civilian methods of large-scale construction didn't change until the 1930s. Up until that time, most contractors building a road used men with shovels or men driving mules. So, in this engineers' war, we had to work overtime, and we had to expand. We built a new plant in Vicksburg, right on the Mississippi River. We combined the dedication with a war bond rally and a public picnic. If you ever want to feed 10,000 people with hot tamale pie, here's Evelyn's recipe.
First, you'll need 4 350-gallon pots. Then, 2,400 pounds of ground beef, 600 pounds of onions, 90 pounds of salt, 6 pounds of black pepper, 30 pounds of Spanish pepper, and 600 pounds of cornmeal.
We built a factory in Australia, not only to be able to ship needed equipment more quickly to the Pacific area, but also to assist in development plans down under, in Australia itself. We started a plant in England, too, but it was one of our failures. After the war, in 1946, we were flying over East Texas. A steel plant had been built at Dangerfield, proving that if you scratch that rusty East Texas soil deeply enough, you'll find iron. I like the wide open spaces of Texas, and I like the idea of being located next door to a steel mill, or perhaps build my own. We were flying with Mr. Estes, the publisher of the Longview newspaper.
Mr. Estes, what's that cluster of buildings down there?
That's Harmon Hospital.
A hospital?
Built during the war.
Is that in Longview?
Yes, sir. Housed 3,000 patients.
Isn't it being used now?
Mrs. LeTourneau, the government has closed the hospital. In fact, it's up for sale. Surplus property.
You don't say.
Of course, that wouldn't do at all for a steel mill or a factory.
But it surely would do well for a school. That technical school you've been dreaming about, Pop.
So circle those buildings down below. Let's have a closer look. For a fellow who never finished grade school, I've been very much interested in education, especially technical education. I went to a vocational school in San Francisco, took correspondence courses in engineering. I read a lot. A fellow once told me, anybody who can read has all it takes to study. One magazine I always read from cover to cover was Iron Age. I taught my men new skills in welding. We had a regular night school going in Peoria. We made skilled workers out of unskilled mountain people in Georgia. We trained thousands of servicemen during the war to master the heavy equipment we were shipping, using films and audio visuals, which were a novelty in those days. But I had always dreamed of a technical school. And in 1946, the old Harmon Hospital became the LeTourneau Technical Institute. Today, it's a fully accredited school, LeTourneau College. And my son Rich, who got all of his education, including his Ph.D. in industrial engineering and management at his own expense, is now the president.
Well, the inventory is finished.
That must have been a job.
Job? Do you know there are 232 buildings in this campus? We've also counted stoves, refrigerators, and beds.
There ought to be a place for us to live here on campus.
Oh, I've already picked out the place. It'll do just fine.
We lived right on campus for 6 years, living and working with the students. That was the philosophy. That's what I tried to say at the very beginning on the first day of school. To raise their earning power, people must be taught. To teach them, they must have both the practical and the theoretical. To give them the practical, they must have the machines of production on which to practice. For the theoretical, they must have the classrooms. And they must have housing for both. I was driving along in my little Beetle one day, inspecting, planning, thinking. I seem to get my best ideas when I'm moving. I've taken a lot of ribbing about driving that little VW, but I liked it. You could drive it anywhere. As I was bouncing along across a field, I saw one of my big turniples lugging a carryall sitting there on the testing ground with no driver to be seen. What was worse, the tractor's diesel was running. Hey, what's everybody doing? Hey, what's going on? Stop! Oh no! He's running over my car!
Mr. R.G., are you all right? I didn't see you.
I didn't see you either. That's what had me worried.
Oh, I'm sorry about the car.
Well, So am I. And I'm glad I wasn't inside the car. I don't like to see waste. I thought someone had left an engine running and had gone off and forgotten it. That's a quick way to lose money. Some folks have the mistaken notion that it's sinful to make money, or that there's something unchristian about a Christian trying to make a profit. Well, let me tell you, I wouldn't have been a very good steward. I wouldn't have done very well by my partner if I'd followed that philosophy. You remember that in selling our company to Westinghouse, we weren't to build or design any earth-moving equipment for 5 years. Well, we didn't. But we were sure busy, like experimenting with a missionary self-help project in Liberia. We hauled the equipment we needed on our own ship. My daughter Louise and her husband Gus were in charge. The government leased us 500,000 acres. We built a model village, which included a school, a clinic, and a church. We introduced new methods of clearing the jungle to retrieve valuable hardwoods, as well as to provide new fertile land for agriculture. We taught the Liberians to help themselves, teaching them how to use some of this equipment for their own development. A year later, we were carrying out a similar project in the jungles of Peru, in cooperation with a group of Wycliffe translators. My son Roy ran that one. The objective there was to provide new land for farming, clearing the jungle, keeping the jungle from coming back in. We invented some new machines in the process, giant tree saws, cutting trees flush at the ground, a jungle crusher that could clear an acre of forest in 15 minutes, new types of rooters that would chop and mulch up the jungle floor to prepare soil for gardens and farms, the log stackers and cranes. That's how we tried to share the gospel in practical ways. Our 2 factories were busy, but we weren't building earth-moving equipment. After the 5 years were up, however, after 1958, we started to do that again, too.
Pop, if God grants you another 10 years, what would you still like to invent?
Well, I know what I'd like to explore. I think we can make the earth movers bigger and more efficient. Maybe we should be doing more with huge conveyor belts.
What else?
Turbine engines. Now, those are the things I'd like to get into.
Oh, Pop, when are you going to retire?
Mom, when are you going to quit cooking? God has given me more ideas since I retired than I had had time to work out. So why stop? When all is said and done, I guess there are really 2 things I like to do. One is to design machinery, turn on the power, and see it work. The other is to tell people about the power of the gospel and see it work in their lives. Try it. God bless you. Amen. You've just heard the 10th and concluding chapter of Mover of Men and Mountains, based on the autobiography of R.G. LeTourneau, published by Moody Press. Walter Carlson was heard in the role of Mr. LeTourneau. Others in the cast were Mary Seibel as Evelyn LeTourneau and Rex Brenner as Caleb. Others heard were Larry Moran and Hugo Reisner. Sound was by John McComb. Musical effects by Lucille Becker. Stereo sound mixer David McAllister. The story was written by John Gillies and was directed by Mike Kellogg, and is another in the series Stories of Great Christians, produced by the Department of Broadcasting of the Moody Bible Institute in Chicago.
Well, that was it, all 10 chapters. What do you think? I hope you enjoyed that series. And Who knows, there might be a sneak peek on a little bit more next time as we go toward the end of the month. Well, always a pleasure to have you come along. Till next time, Lord bless, keep you, grow in grace, and leave a comment. Don't forget, join us, hit subscribe, don't miss anything. Till next time, adios amigos.